The Impact of Betrayal and Redemption, Lessons from David and Bathsheba's Story. Reflect on the enduring impact of the biblical tale of David and Bathsheba, and the lessons it offers on the themes of betrayal and redemption. Discover how their story continues to resonate with audiences today.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our video presentation on one of the most intriguing stories of betrayal and redemption found in the Bible. Today we will delve into the biblical tale of King David and Bathsheba. So, without further ado, let us begin. The story of King David and Bathsheba is one of the most famous tales of betrayal and redemption in the Bible. This ancient narrative from the book of 2 Samuel tells the story of King David's affair with Bathsheba, the wife of one of his loyal soldiers, and the consequences that followed. The story begins with King David's betrayal of his loyal soldier Uriah by sleeping with his wife Bathsheba. David's betrayal not only violates the sanctity of marriage and the code of honor among soldiers, but also goes against the commandments of God. As a result of their adulterous affair, Bathsheba becomes pregnant, and in an attempt to cover up his wrongdoing, David conspires to have Uriah killed in battle. The consequences of David's betrayal are severe. The child born from his affair with Bathsheba becomes gravely ill and dies, and David's household is thrown into turmoil. The king's actions also result in the loss of God's favor, leading to a period of suffering and punishment for the kingdom of Israel. Despite the gravity of his sins, the story of David and Bathsheba is ultimately one of redemption. When confronted by the prophet Nathan, David acknowledges his wrongdoing and repents before God. He seeks forgiveness and is eventually restored to a place of honor and righteousness in the eyes of God. The tale of David and Bathsheba serves as a powerful reminder of the human capacity for betrayal and the possibility of redemption. It highlights the consequences of our actions and the importance of seeking forgiveness and atonement. The story also reflects the mercy and grace of God, who offers redemption to those who repent and seek to make amends for their mistakes. In conclusion, the biblical tale of David and Bathsheba is a timeless story of betrayal and redemption that continues to resonate with readers today. It serves as a powerful reminder of the consequences of our actions and the possibility of redemption through repentance and forgiveness. The story of David and Bathsheba ultimately offers hope and encouragement, demonstrating that no mistake is beyond redemption. Before we get into the lesson, let's give out a special thanks shout-out to a subscriber, Vishwaksai Collection, Sananine 2. Verse 1:3-11. And it came to pass after the year was expired, at the time when kings go forth to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him, and all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon, and besieged Rabbah. But David tarried still at Jerusalem. And it came to pass in an eventide that David arose from off his bed, and walked upon the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired after the woman, and one said, Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Verse 4-5. And David sent messengers, and took her, and she came in unto him, and he lay with her, for she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned unto her house. And the woman conceived, and sent and told David, and said, I am with child. Outline I. David commits adultery 1-5. David tries to cover it up 6:13. 3. David has Uriah killed 14-27. 1. Why is the spring the time kings go out to battle? Where was David during this time? Why do you think David may have stayed in Jerusalem? 3. Where was David's first mistake in this passage? 6. Why could he see a woman bathing from his roof? Phew. Who was at fault in this adultery? What were Bathsheba's areas of culpability? 6. How do you think of her likely reasoning, "The king commanded me, so I had to do it"? Was it wrong for David to see Bathsheba? What should David have done when he saw her? 8. How can sisters today help prevent their brothers from stumbling like David did? 9. What can brothers learn from this passage? 10. How can brothers avoid falling into the same sin or types of sin that David fell into? Matthew 5:28. If you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you have already committed adultery. Galatians 5:16. Walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the flesh. Corinthians 6:18. Flee from sexual immorality. John 2:16. The lust of the eyes is from the world. Timothy 2:22. Flee youthful passions. James 1:14-15. Each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Job 31:1. I have made a covenant with my eyes not to gaze at a virgin. Psalm 119:37. Turn your eyes from worthless things. Font! In the spring, when kings go out to war, springtime was the beginning of most military campaigns. The troops did not have to contend with winter and the difficulties that accompanied it. Also, there would be plenty of time before the next winter to finish the campaign. Though his army was at war, David was not. It might not be considered that significant, except for the fact that the author specifically mentions it. This would seem to indicate that David not going to war was abnormal, and not something that would be looked on favorably by God, the army, or the country. We don't know why David decided not to go with the army. Perhaps it was nothing more than laziness, and a desire to enjoy the comfortable life of the palace, rather than the harsh realities of war. It is said that an idle mind is the devil's playground. David apparently had altogether too much free time at the palace, when he should have been directing the army. And we will see that the results were not good. Application. One method to preemptively ward off temptation is to keep ourselves busy doing good things. If we are using our time well serving the Lord, there is less time and opportunity for thinking of and participating in sin. 2. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. Let's look at this from the perspective of both Bathsheba and David. Bathsheba. Some scholars have suggested that David's palace was higher than the surrounding area. They also suggest that Bathsheba was bathing in a courtyard surrounded by walls on every side. Regardless of the exact setup of her house and the neighboring houses, we do know that David saw her while she was bathing. Even allowing one person to see her bathing was a mistake. Bathsheba was not being modest. See 1 Timothy 2:9-10 and Proverbs 11:22. Was Bathsheba doing this intentionally? Was it an elaborate scheme to ensnare David? We don't know. It was either very naive or blatantly seductive. David. The first sight of Bathsheba was not sinful. If David was just having a walk on the roof and happened to catch sight of Bathsheba, he cannot be blamed for that first moment. The sin is in the second look or the lingering look. You see, after David first saw, perhaps unintentionally, Bathsheba, he had a choice. What should he have done? He could have immediately turned away and gone back inside. Even further, he could have issued a new law that all Israelites must only bath inside the privacy of their own homes. But this is not what David did. He kept looking long enough to notice that Bathsheba was beautiful. After that, he could not get her out of his mind. A thought, a temptation, a lust had been born in his mind. Instead of confessing that initial lust and dealing with it, he pursued it. He allowed it to grow. Then he did the worst thing he could have possibly done. He acted on it. He sent people to inquire. Step by step, David committed the worst sin in his whole life, and it was disastrous on many levels. The next step, after finding out who she was, David sent messengers to get her. 3, verses 4-5. David was not the only one to blame for this sin. His messengers were culpable because they didn't stand up to his sinful instructions. Bathsheba was also responsible. She should have made up her mind to obey God rather man. Instead, she gave in to either fear or flattery. It is possible that she was motivated to go to David because she was afraid at what the king would do if she disobeyed. She might have even made the excuse, I have no choice. Instead, she should have placed her faith in God for protection. I asked Christy her thoughts of Bathsheba, and she said Bathsheba should have said, if I die, I die. Or perhaps Bathsheba was genuinely flattered. She might have been excited to be noticed by someone rich and powerful like the king. She might have even imagined how much more comfortable a royal life in the palace would be than being the simple wife of a simple soldier. If Bathsheba had the moral fortitude to write a letter to David declining his command and emphasizing her loyalty to her own husband, that might have been the end of it. Unfortunately, we won't know because she took the easy way out. Bathsheba conceived and sent a message to David telling him she was pregnant. Evidently, both of them were hoping that no one would discover their sin, and the news that she was pregnant panicked both of them. Here was a chance for David to come clean, accept responsibility, and confess. Instead, we will see he keeps stacking one sin on top of another to try to solve this problem. Verse 6-9, 6. And David sent to Joab, saying, Send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. 7. And when Uriah was come unto him, David demanded of him how Joab did, and how the people did, and how the war prospered. And David said to Uriah, Go down to thy house and wash thy feet. And Uriah departed out of the king's house, and there followed him a mess of meat from the king. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and went not down to his house. Verse 10, 11, 10. And when they had told David, saying, Uriah went not down unto his house, David said unto Uriah, Camest thou not from thy journey? Why then didst thou not go down unto thine house? 11. And Uriah said unto David, The ark and Israel and Judah abide in tents, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go into mine house, to eat and to drink, and to lie with my wife? As thou livest, and as thy soul liveth, I will not do this thing. Shloshel 13, 12. And David said to Uriah, Tarry here today also, and tomorrow I will let thee depart. So Uriah abode in Jerusalem that day and the morrow. 13. And when David had called him, he did eat and drink before him, and he made him drunk. And at even he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his lord, but went not down to his house. What fact moved David to action, starting in verse 6? What does this teach us about the nature of sin? What should David have done when he found out that Bathsheba was pregnant? What does David mean in verse, Go down to your house and wash your feet? What was he trying to do? 3. Does David give up after his first attempt to cover his sin failed? What do we learn from Uriah in these verses? What kind of person was he? Does David give up after his second attempt to cover his sin failed? Proverbs 28:13. He who conceals his transgressions will not prosper. Proverbs 10:18. Whoever conceals hatred has lying lips. John 3:19-20. Everyone who does evil hates the light. Jeremiah 16:17. Our iniquities are not concealed from God. 1. Go down to your house and watch your feet. David attempted a cover-up. He was hoping that Uriah would go back to his home, sleep with his wife, and then that he would think the child was his own. Is this a good strategy? Why or why not? Even if David succeeded, he and Bathsheba would both have to live perpetually with the guilt of their adultery. Bathsheba would be forced to live a lie day after day. It was a coward's way out. 2. Uriah slept at the entrance of the palace. Uriah was more honorable than David or Bathsheba. He believed that his place was with the army. His fellow soldiers were enduring hardship for the sake of their country, and he couldn't enjoy himself and his normal life with a good conscience until his mission was complete. See verse 11. He understood David's implied suggestion, but he was a soldier, and he had a job to do. 3. David tries one more time. David's first attempt to talk Uriah into going back to his house and sleep with his wife didn't work. So in his panic, David tries another method. This time he gets Uriah drunk. His hope is that Uriah will lose his self-control, and in his drunken state forget his stated principles. Uriah does not forget. Even drunk, he still stayed at the palace. 4. David schemes to have Uriah killed. Once again, David does not confess his sin. His flesh is firmly in control. David is desperate to cover up his sin no matter what the cost. Why do you think he is so desperate to cover up his sin? In his desperation, he comes up with the worst plan yet. He is going to arrange the battle in such a way that Uriah would die. Later, David made the statement that the sword devours one as well as another. What do you think of this reasoning? 5. verses 19 to 24. Joab was complicit in this murder. As commander of the army, he should have stood up to David. While David was the main culprit in all of this, no one stood up to him. No one pulled him aside and said, "What are you doing?" David himself never pulled his sons aside to challenge their behavior. See 1 Kings 1:6. Perhaps if others had set him a better model in this, he too would have done a better job in raising his own children. Joab knew David would be angry about the report of the battle. That tells us that this was not a normal battle and not a normal battle strategy. Any military commander would instantly know how foolish this battle arrangement was. Therefore, it is clear that no excuses about death in battle stands up. It was premeditated and intentional. 6, verse 25. David was not repentant. Uriah's death did not wake him up. He instead continued to excuse his sin and offer the justification that death in battle happens. 7. Bathsheba mourned for her husband according to local customs, and then was brought to the palace to be David's wife. David's treachery was complete. Hate! The thing David had done displeased the Lord. Before this phrase, it looks like the story is over. Uriah was gone. The sin had remained secret. David's plan seemed to have worked. But here the author adds a very important observation. God knew what David had done, and God was not pleased by it. The rest of the chapter is historical narrative, merely reporting the facts as they happened. Here we get a glimpse into God's thoughts about all of this. God is always watching. God sees whatever we do. We may be able to fool the people around us. We may even be able to fool ourselves. But we will not fool God. He will not fall for our excuses or justifications because he sees the truth. He sees our secret intentions and motivations exactly as they are. Whenever we face temptation, we should remember that God is watching and we cannot keep anything secret from him. See Luke 8:17. Verse 14 to 17:14. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab, and sent it by the hand of Uriah. 15. And he wrote in the letter, saying, Set ye Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire ye from him, that he may be smitten and die. And it came to pass, when Joab observed the city, that he assigned Uriah unto a place where he knew that valiant men were. And the men of the city went out and fought with Joab, and there fell some of the people of the servants of David, and Uriah the Hittite died also. Then Joab sent and told David all the things concerning the war. 19, and charged the messenger, saying, When thou hast made an end of telling the matters of the war unto the king, 20. And if so be that the king's wrath arise, and he say unto thee, Wherefore approached ye so nigh unto the city when ye did fight? Knew ye not that they would shoot from the wall? 21. Who smote Abimelech the son of Jerubbesheth? Did not a woman cast a piece of a millstone upon him from the wall, that he died in Thebez? Why went ye nigh the wall? Then say thou, Thy servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. 22. So the messenger went, and came and showed David all that Joab had sent him for. 3. And the messenger said unto David, Surely the men prevailed against us, and came out unto us into the field, and we were upon them even unto the entering of the gate. 4. And the shooters shot from off the wall upon thy servants, and some of the king's servants be dead, and thy servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. 25. Then David said unto the messenger, Thus shalt thou say unto Joab, Let not this thing displease thee, for the sword devoureth one as well as another. Make thy battle more strong against the city, and overthrow it, and encourage thou him. 26. And when the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah her husband was dead, she mourned for her husband. 27. And when the mourning was past, David sent and fetched her to his house, and she became his wife, and bare him a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. After David realized that Uriah would not be persuaded to sleep with his wife, he sent him back to the army. He then ordered his commander Joab to place him on the next battle's front lines. As the battle raged, Joab would retreat, leaving Uriah alone to fend for himself. In the following battle, Joab did as commanded. Uriah was killed, 2 Samuel 11:14-25. Did Bathsheba ever learn that David had ordered her husband's death? We do not know. All we know is that David had murdered one of his most loyal servants and brothers in arms to conceal his sin. The Bible tells us that when the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah her husband was dead, she mourned for her husband. When the mourning was over, David sent her to his house, and she became his wife. Then she bore him a son. But the thing that David had done was evil in the sight of the Lord. 2 Samuel 11:26-27. David may have thought he had gotten away with it. God, however, was fully aware of what he had done and later confronted him via the prophet Nathan, 2 Samuel 12. God, in his grace, eventually forgives and restores David. Nevertheless, David's lust, adultery, betrayal, deceit, and murder cost him, his family, and the nation for many years to come. David may be regarded as a man after God's own heart. Still, in this story, the integrity, loyalty, and honor of Uriah the Hittite, an outsider to Israel, far overshadow the lust and betrayal of Israel's greatest king. 1. Does David give up after his third attempt to cover up his sin? 2. What is David's next plan? 3. How do you think of this plan? Is this the same as murder? After all, Uriah is a soldier. Why or why not? So, what do verses 19 to 21 show about David and Joab's military strategy in this battle? 5. Did anyone else suffer because of David's sin? Who? What does this teach us about the peril of sin and its consequences? 6. Based on verse 25, was David penitent for what he had done? What did verse 25 show about his attitude? 7. There is one line in this chapter that is not merely historical narrative. What is it? But the thing that David had done was evil in the sight of the Lord. Good. What principles can we learn from this chapter? What do we learn about sin, about lust, about covering up sin? How can we avoid the same mistakes that David made? Before we close this lesson, let's give another special thanks. Shout out to more subscribers: Gianni, Tung25, SM37, Sonia Bajaj VP8 Esho,